Chapter 8, Lecture 3, Defining and Identifying Market Power. So in this lecture, you will learn how to define the relevant market and measure concentration and identify market power. So to better understand and predict the market behavior and performance, we need to determine the precise boundaries of a market, to determine the precise product being bought and sold, and to identify the number of the sellers in a market area. So there are so many theoretical issues and practical limitations when defining the markets. And in this lecture, you will learn how market concentration and how market power are measured in practice. So there are two dimensions of market. The first one is the relevant product market. You have to define what are the relevant market product market, and also you have to determine the relevant geographical market. So when you are determining the relevant market product market, you have to look at various goods and services that can be basically used in replacement as a substitute or complement with that goods and services. For example, there are lots of studies shows that social workers may be complement or for psychiatrists and substitute for psychologists. So therefore, when you are defining the relevant product market, you have to consider whether these different products or services that can be used as a substitute or as a complement. The second factor you have to determine is the relevant geographical market, so which actually establishes the spatial boundaries in which a set of buyers purchase the product or services. So you have to look at the local, in terms of local, basically boundaries, local market, regional, national, international, which basically includes all the sellers' location to which buyers might switch. So what you're, for example, if a hospital in College Park is, basically is unlikely to compete with the hospital in New York, so because of the geographical location. The consolidation of the other factor is if you see there is a consolidation of basically 3 clinics, that may be actually good things because that may benefit the community by lower prices if economies of scale exist. So this two dimension of market is very important when you are studying the market power. So when you're looking at the integration, first you have to determine whether this is horizontal or vertical integration. In the horizontal integration, the integration consolidation among the similar product types basically can actually have a good positive impact because of the economies of scale. So, and the example would be 2 hospitals merge with each other, so that those are basically they are producing the similar product. Their merge may actually cause economies of scale and lower the average total cost. The vertical integration is the integrating along the continuum of services. For example, a hospital buys a physician groups. So this is called vertical. In the vertical mergers, the firm basically diversifies into another product line, which basically give them the market power so they can actually control over the market. So what are the benefits and harms of consolidation? There are benefits. The pros of the main one is economies of scales. So it can offer more specialized services, can make bigger investment in terms of different health technology, can better coordinate care across continuum. For example, if they have different specialists in their actually bigger market, so they can actually help the patients instead of patients going from different doctor in different geographical place. They can actually um, go to one integrated center and have different specialists to identify, diagnose their problem. The cons for monopoly is the higher prices because of market power, so they can set their own prices, and even the non-profit organizations are not immune. The problem is that when there is only one market, one firm in the market, so there is no competition in the market. So there is no reason to improve the quality of care. There is no reason to innovate, to come up with a better idea for improving the care. And they actually set their price higher because there is no competition in the market. So that's the negative side of the uh, consolidation. So now how we can quantitatively basically measure the market concentration. The first way to measure that is the four firm concentration ratio, we call CR4, which is basically percentage of the industry output produced by the largest firms in an industry. You take the sum of the market shares of four largest firms in terms of sales, volume of output, or employment. And then, so if you look at the ranges, which basically is between 0 to 100%, if the CR4 for these four largest firms is greater than 60%, means that they are tightly oligopolistic. If they are between 40 and 60%, they are loose oligopoly. And if they are between less than 40%, they are reasonably competitive. So the problem with this method of CR4 is that it fails to give us the distribution of the industry among the largest firms, among the four largest firms. So we don't know if these four largest firms, which one maybe has a bigger portion and market power. So there is another way to measure the market power by, it's called Herfindahl-Hirschman Index, or HHI. The Herfindahl-Hirschman Index is commonly accepted measure of market concentration. It is calculated by squaring the market share of each firm competing in the market and then summing the resulting numbers. So basically, we go one step further. Instead of just summing the percentage of the shares of the four biggest, largest firms, we are squaring them. So it's a sum of the squared market share of all the firms in the relevant market, and then we look at the percentage of the market share or percentage of the industry output produced between. So if HHI could come up between 0 and 10,000, if it's closer to 0, it's a perfectly competitive firm, competitive market, and if it's closer to 10,000, means that there is a market power in the industry. So how do we measure HHI? So the agency generally classify markets into three groups. The unconcentrated markets, HHR, are below 1,500. The moderately concentrated markets are between 1,500 and 2,500. And the highly concentrated markets are above 2,500. So basically, when we have a HHI closer to 0, means that the market is basically very competitive. There are a greater number of the firms in the market. So the existing firms are more equally sized, and the industry is less concentrated or more structurally competitive. So If the HHI is closer to the 10,000, means that the market is dominated by one firm, basically. If it's equal to the 10,000, means that only one firm. Remember this actually scaling scale we had. So here you can see if there are two ways to measure the market concentration. The first one, the four firm, and then HHI. So if the four firm is closer between 0 and 60%, means that the market is competitive. If it's between 61 to 99%, which is moderately concentrated, and if it is 100%, means that is perfectly concentrated. The same thing for HHI. If it's close to 0, means that basically it is perfectly competitive. If it's between 0 to 1800, means that it's one of these two, monopolistic competition, oligopoly. And if it's between 0 to 1800, means that it is very close to the perfectly competitive firm. And if it is between 1800 and 9,999, it is kind of a little bit concentrated, falls in this way, in this part. And if it's closer to the 10,000, means that it is a concentrated market that falls to this area. So let's look at one example. In 2003, the 5 largest manufacturers of soft contact lenses market share were these actually 5 market. So these are the percentage of market share. And if we wanted to use the CR4 or the 4 market share, basically we have to sum the 4 largest market with the largest market share. So we don't include the last one, which is basically the 5th market. So only we add the market share of the 4 largest market share, and when we add them up, we see that it comes to 86%, which, looking at the scaling scale, it's about basically is kind of tightly oligopolistic. If we use the HHI, we square them up, and then so basically multiply each of them by each other, by itself, and then add them up. And then we see that this is kind of close to highly concentrated. So this basically confirm our first, basically calculation by CR4. Now, so what we can do with concentration? So basically, we have a market power in the U.S. So and despite the decades of antitrust litigation and regulatory intervention, still we have this problem. So what is the solution? Greensley, who is a professor of law in University of California, is suggesting that the antitrust law has an important but constrained role, and the best way is actually to prevent the market power is by capping the prices, maybe most effective. So this is the end of chapter 8.